Hey guys, we're back with Awaze with your host Hawi
and TG,
and we're here with our 5th video about female reproductive health.
Yes sir. So for our Sis How Do I series, we do a lot of conversations about normalizing topics, and one of the things that we wanted to talk about is female reproductive health and menstrual cycles, and making sure that that conversation is no longer viewed as a taboo.
Yes. So let's take a stroll down 7th grade biology class.
The female anatomy, it's slightly different from the male, in case you haven't noticed. The female reproductive system provides several functions. The ovaries produce the egg cells called the ova. The ova are then transported to the fallopian tube, where fertilization by a sperm may occur. The fertilized egg then moves to the uterus, where the uterine lining has thickened in response to normal hormones of the reproductive cycle. Once in the uterus, the fertilized egg can implant into thickened uterine lining and continue to develop. If implantation does not take place, the uterine lining is shed as menstrual flow. Females of reproductive age, beginning anywhere from 11 to 16 years of age, experience cycles of hormonal activity that repeat at about 1 month intervals. The term menstruation refers to the periodic shedding of the uterine lining. Menstrual health refers to a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity in relation to the menstrual cycle. When talking about menstrual health, it encompasses awareness of menstruation before the first period, use of menstrual materials to capture and contain menstrual blood, such as sanitary pads, cloth, tampon, or cups, access to a private place to wash and change while at home, and participation in activities during menstruation, such as school, work, and social activities.
Welcome back. That was a quick little refresher course in biology, so that you understand a little bit more. Some of you might not have even known some of these things.
Sometimes you have to be reminded. You can forget these things, and every now and then you need to be reminded about female reproductive health.
For sure. I wish they taught us in a little bit more detail, to be honest.
Sure.
Because you end up growing up with a lot of questions, a lot of confusion, because I genuinely believe that female reproductive health is something that's not focused on per se. So besides the basics, we also wanted to talk about some of our experiences as women.
Yeah, we want to talk
some
about
of the traumas and the scarring moments.
Oh Lord. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, mine was not as terrible, like as traumatic, my first period, which is something that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so definitely first periods for every woman, there's a story there.
How was your first experience?
It was like the end of 8th grade.
8th grade?
Yes.
What?
Very early or very late?
A little bit late.
It's different for every woman, okay? No, it was definitely the end of 8th grade. We had like our national exams and everything, and it was just me and my mom, and I had brothers, and nobody ever talked about periods or menstruation or anything in the house.
Yeah.
But I was a smart student and I paid attention in class, so I knew what it was, kinda.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the full details, so I ran home and I told my mom, and she went and bought me sanitary pads. She showed me how to use them, and we never talked about it after that. We just kind of, I'll just be like, I'm sick, I have cramps, and that's about it. That's the most we had a conversation about it. So it wasn't too awkward, luckily, because science.
That's interesting because, and that's not to shame any woman. I mean, everybody gets their periods at different points of age in their life. I got mine when I was in 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, definitely.
I got it very early. Yeah, so I was a child and I had no idea. And I kind of was like, Mom, something's wrong. But the good thing is that in 5th grade, we learned about sex education in my school.
Yes, because you did not grow up here.
I did not grow up here.
Sex ed.
One thing, I grew up in the States, guys, Minnesota. Woo woo. So we had sex education in our school, and so I learned a little bit about it then, and it kind of wasn't a big shock, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually really happening. And then my mom showed me how you put on a pad and how you're supposed to even wrap it up. And with that, it just at least for me, made me comfortable being able to talk about it with my mom. I am from a house of 4 girls, so I was the first, and I kind of was also able to let my sisters know about it.
You had to guide, huh?
I had to guide, but the interesting thing was that my dad is a physiologist, so he knows everything about the way, you know, the body works, but we never talked about our periods in front of dad. It was just uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. To this day, I think I'd be mortified if I ever had to discuss it with my dad, for sure. What are some of the surprises when you started to learn and do your own research as you grew up to understand female reproductive health? What are some of the things that surprised you along the way?
So I think it's interesting because like when you grow up, I think the more you become in tune with your body, the better you understand yourself. And I think that for me, sometimes, you know, some months would be easier in terms of flow, and some months, because I'm a heavy bleeder.
Yeah.
We're normalizing this conversation, guys. So,
deal with it.
I'm a heavy bleeder, and I was just like, why is it so painful some months, and how come some months, you know, are better? So I came to understand my body better and just how I have to treat myself when that time of the month approaches. But also being able to have conversations with like female friends and family members, because it was awkward before. No one talked about it before. And I think being able to talk about it, you are able to know what to do, and you're able to just be like, oh, well, I'm not coming to work today because this hurts. Like, I'm cramping, I'm PMSing.
Hell no, I'm staying home today. Yeah, no, I did spend most of my life it was so much taboo around the subject. Mm-hmm. And even till this day, if you go to buy a sanitary pad, they'll like wrap it up in a piece of paper and put it in a black plastic bag so that nobody sees it. And I'm just like, would you do that with a napkin? Like if I bought a napkin.
Yeah.
True. And there's this heavy taboo about speaking about it. So how are you ever gonna learn or understand your body better if nobody has these conversations?
Exactly.
2 things that will stick with me forever. One, up until I joined university, like I said, I still didn't tell anybody when it was that time of the month. I just asked my mom for money, go buy my pads, and we do not have that conversation. Mm-hmm. But I got to campus and I was in a class full of girls from Nazareth School. Shout out to Nazareth School girls. But I saw how different their experiences of these things were to me, because they grew up in an all-female environment.
True.
And you see how relaxed they are about it. And like, it was nothing. I was jealous, but I was also cringing. Like, for the most part. Yeah. So yeah, I was telling you guys a story earlier about we were in class, there's boys there and everything, and we're waiting for a teacher. And there were 2 of them, they were sitting very far apart from each other. And they just yelled across the room, hey, I need a pad. And one of them threw it at her. Wow. And I just
was in shock.
That level of freedom to me was insane. But it definitely made me more desensitized and realize it's nature. I don't know why I'm embarrassed.
You know what's interesting is the fact that I think a majority of girls have nicknames that we give towards our
Auntie Flo. It's like,
and I gave myself, I think I told you about this recently. I gave myself, I'm riding my bike. That's what I would say.
She says she's riding her bike.
You know, menstrual cycle, like I'm riding my bike. So that was my way of even just telling people I'm on my period. And now it's just like, screw you guys, I'm on my period. So even just taking away, I think the nicknames allows us to normalize menstrual cycle and reproductive health too.
Okay. And lastly, if you could give advice to the women that are listening to us as to their health, their feminine health especially, what would you tell women?
That's a good question, because I have little sisters, so I look at you guys as like my sisters. And it's like, one thing is just understanding, again, what time of the month it comes. You don't always have to do the math. The great thing is there are applications for that.
True.
That let you know when
have
your
a
cycle
flow app on your phone.
Exactly, when your cycle is going to approach, just so that you're prepared. I think that's great just to, you know, have that be in sync on your phone. But also, I think something that's not really talked about in our society is women regularly seeing an OBG or, you know, a gynecologist about having pap smears and just being on top of their reproductive health. I think in the West, that's something that's encouraged a lot, but that's not a conversation we have a lot in Ethiopia.
Absolutely.
And you're supposed to get it at least, I think you're supposed to go a couple of times a year, if I'm not mistaken. And so if that's something that we're on top of, then if there are any, risks or anything that we're supposed to, just be aware of, we would know ahead of time as opposed to, when it's too late.
True.
What
Absolutely.
about you? What's something that you would want to give as advice?
For me, somebody else had to point it out for me to even realize this specific thing, and it was my fiance about a year ago. And he was like, okay, so let me get this straight. The week before your period, you're bloated, you have your back hurts, you have a headache, just in like anticipation. And then there's the week of, and then you're completely sick, you have cramps and everything else. And then there's a week after where you have ovulation pain.
Yes.
So he was like, so you're only like, your body's only okay 1 week out of a month.
Exactly.
Like forever since you hit puberty. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. So that whole, she must be here on her period, she's so stop. We're not children, stop that. So it is a lot for women, even though we conceal it and we pretend we're okay. Most of our work environments don't even allow us to take a day off. And when you think about kids that are in school, and this is something that we talk about a lot on this series, is the kids that end up missing school due to their periods because either they can't afford sanitary pads or they have cramps. I feel like schools should be doing a better job, workplaces should be doing a better job at least help out some women, man.
What issue I have is, and we've talked about this individually, whereas I think it's become recent where sanitary pads have not been tagged or taxed as a luxury item. It's actually expensive, even for the person, the average individual that can afford it.
Sure.
But you can imagine for the person that can't. Like I said, I grew up abroad where pads and even like tampons, which are a lifesaver by the way, are super cheap. So to come here and to see it be so expensive, I feel like that needs to be a change that we see even within our country in the future too.
Absolutely. So before we leave, one is definitely learn about breast exams, which is something that we haven't fully talked about in this video because it's cut short. But there's plenty of information out there. You can learn of ways how to give yourself a breast exam.
Yes.
It's a great way to catch breast cancer and things like that early on. Two, while we're talking about menstrual health, we actually want to help alleviate some of that stress from society. So we are actually donating sanitary pads.
Reusable
sanitary pads to hopefully 200 girls that are going to school and that are struggling because of their periods. So if you guys want to get involved, if you want to help, if you want to be a part of it, please make sure to hit us up on all our social media platforms.
Yes, we're going to try to create an account for those who live here in Ethiopia so that you can be able to join us in this cause. And for those of you that don't live in Ethiopia, we'll figure out a means in which you guys can also be able to contribute. So make sure to like and follow us on Awazi Media so you can know how to do that.
Absolutely. And as we always say, stay hydrated, make good decisions. Awazi out. Bye.